Hello and welcome to another edition of Business and Financial Raw Talk. I am LaWanna Bradford, and in today's disruptive environment, emotional intelligence is the buzz. But it's always been, but not to this level. Individuals are really struggling with how to show up for themselves, but how to show up with others. And that's being situationally, emotionally aware so that you can navigate this change. It's a climate of disruption, and I really believe that is the environment that we're going to be in. That what we knew before is gone. It's yesterday. It's history. Well, today I have a very special guest, none other than Marcus Wright with the Wright mentality. He is an international speaker, emotional intelligence expert, and he is known for transforming leadership. So helping them to navigate, understanding what it means to establish emotional intelligence so that it becomes their superpower. There's a little bit more of his story and who he is that we're going to share, but I want to ensure that we weave this in this very interesting and very timely conversation. We'll be back in just a moment with none other than Marcus A. Wright. How's it going, Marcus? Welcome.
It's going well, and thank you for having me today.
Thank you for staying. Yes, I know our schedules we've been like two ships passing in the night, right?
Yes, it has. But I am
But we
so
are
glad
here
to
now.
finally be here with you. I'm so
Yes.
excited.
Thank you. And thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I think your lane and zone of genius is really what we need to hear. Those of us who are entrepreneurs, perhaps in the corporate landscape, is really leaning into this and figuring out how can we leverage what you call our superpower in this environment. And this show is entitled The EQ Advantage, Reinventing Yourself from the Inside Out. So before we jump into the meat and potatoes of this, Marcus, how did your path end up here? Like, what was it in maybe your early development, college, corporate, that made you think, I'm really interested in this topic, but not just the topic, but how I can help transform the lives of others?
That's a great question. And I don't talk about this story a lot, but I'm going to be very open at the moment, especially since you asked that question. When I was 23 years old, I worked at a company, a huge telecom company. And I'll never forget really quickly that the VP came, they were talking about a new paging product, and everyone was like, well, this is going to be the new buzz. And I know a lot of young people probably watching this don't know that there was pages before there were phones. But during that time, I raised my hand in this round table, and the first thing you said after the question was, all of you, can you tell me what's going on with this product and why are we having issues? I just honestly said, it's going to fail. And he said, what? And I said, it's going to fail. You guys haven't looked at, and before I could finish that statement, he abruptly ended the meeting and went out of the room. So when that happened, for me, I started to say to myself, I need to probably start to understand personalities and people and their emotions before I open my mouth. And I need to become way more self-aware. And this was at 23 years old. So that's how I started. And then I just went into it because it just became a part of my life and who I was in working with people.
Wow. I love that. And isn't it interesting how an incident, a situation, an experience can happen, many, many moons before we really step into that purpose, right? But it plants that seed. And thank you so much for sharing that. And so now, you, the expert, I want to ask you, with what's going on today, with the shifts, with the downsizing, with mergers, AI, changing in just workforce dynamics, why do you believe emotional intelligence is so important and so critical for leaders who are rising today?
It's very important. It's extremely critical because there's a couple things that we need to realize. We all have problems, emotions, things that we deal with every single day. An example, going into the office, someone cuts you off. Once they cut you off, you don't know how you're going to react. Maybe you're angry because something happened at home. Something has triggered your emotions. And then you walk into that office and you, instead of being able to work with folks, you still take that frustration with you in the office. And once you do that, it starts to cause conflict because now you're angry and you're taking your frustration out on someone else, and someone else is doing the same thing. Well, then you look at what's happening today. AI is in full frontal, like it's the new bud, the bee's knees of everything that's going on. So now you have employees that are frightened, are nervous, afraid, they don't know what to do. And it's going to be important for companies to help train and coach their people on personality and emotional intelligence so that we can deal with our customers much better than the way that we've dealt with them since this new thing has occurred. AI can't replace everything, and it's an actual tool to help us. But until we work with our teams to help them understand how this is going to work within the company and how they're an important part of it, you're going to have people nervous, afraid, and acting irrational because of their emotions, afraid if I'm going to be able to make my mortgage, pay my bills, etc. And now they're starting to jump ship, or they're quietly quitting.
Yes. And I love that you're mentioning, the quiet quitting. And most people think that people leave jobs because, of other opportunities, but they really leave bad leaders, bad
Yes.
managers. It's that we want to be in a state of ease and flow and just do our thing. But when you have, and I get it, when there's stress, right? It sort of trickles down.
Hmm.
And as you mentioned, all the things that are changing, all these disruptions, and you mentioned training. But what do we do when many corporations, that's the first budget line item they cut is training? But we know emotional intelligence is critical. We lump it in the soft skills category, but it's really not a soft skill because we are human beings. So how can what we do and who we are be considered soft? I'll toss that over to you, Marcus.
Well, when I think about that, LaWanna, I want to be very transparent and help leaders understand. You can cut folks quick and you can save money in the short term, but you're going to lose money in the long term. Here's why. There's about an $8.8 trillion deficit in companies today from emotional intelligence. What's happening is companies are letting people go. They're cutting back their training budgets, etc. And what's happening is the key soft skills that are needed to help our customers, to have critical thinking, to be able to deal with situations and resolve them from basically conflict management or conflict resolution. We're not being trained to do that. So we're now reacting, and we're not reacting in a good way, which is causing us to lose customers left and right. There was one gentleman, a CEO of Salesforce. I was amazed and proud of him as a person that loves EQ, but listening to him actually admit, I cut 4,000 jobs too quickly because AI isn't even where it needs to be for me to have cut those 4,000 jobs. Now, he cut those jobs. It saved money in the very short term, but in the long term, it's costing them millions of dollars. So if CEOs and COOs think that way, that will change how they cut the budget for training, meaning they will increase that budget and find another way to cut out certain things.
I love that example. My brother actually works for Salesforce, and they are kind of like the poster child of how to do things right.
Yeah.
However, he said with AI and other generative analytics, it's just sort of randomly, quote unquote, randomly picking and choosing who stays, who goes, and we saw that with and it's not politicizing this, but even with our government and with Doge and how they came in, made random and sometimes arbitrary cuts. And now what are we trying to do? We're trying to figure out how can we backfill things in a
Yes.
legal way that doesn't get us caught up, because if we said we no longer need this position, then how can we turn around and say, well, actually, we kind of do. And
Right.
so it's sort of this really strange push me, pull you effect that we're in right now. And I'd like you to, if you don't mind, just talk a little bit about, and you mentioned this earlier, how AI is a tool, but it's not, we shouldn't be dependent on it where it replaces us leveraging our higher faculties, where it replaces our ability to think and feel and empathize. But it's a tool to help us to be more efficient and more effective, but not losing our humanity in the process.
I think what people are missing, that when they think of AI, they think that this thing can actually solve everything that they're working on. But realistically, think of this. When you start to think of AI and you go online and you start working in any one of them, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, ChatGPT, etc., what is the first thing that it says in the write-ups? It always tells you to look, check, read, and verify, because some of the information may not be correct. Wow. They're telling you that when you're using AI at home, but they're not mentioning that when they're using AI in the corporate space. And what happens is you have employees that are at work that are depending on what you're telling them they need to do, or you thinking that they're thinking that AI is going to cut them out. Now their emotions are at another higher level, and it's heightened, and not in a good way. Instead of working with them, coaching them, and teaching them to adapt to the change, you're eliminating them. But you're also missing the point that even when you use AI at home, it tells you, please read what it stated, because it all may not be 100% correct. Why are we making that caveat at home, but we're not doing it in the corporate space?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. You wrote a book, I believe it's entitled Understanding Your Personality DNA.
That was the first one. And the second one is all about emotional intelligence and adaptability.
So, what is the first step that people can take to really understand what is my emotional intelligence? Because sometimes we think that we are there and we're aware and we're sensitive until we open our mouth and insert foot and we realize, oh, maybe not, right? So what would you tell people? And I want you to speak specifically to those leaders and what they can do to first understand their level of emotional intelligence, that DNA, and then how do you help others on your team uncover that for themselves?
Sure. I would talk to a leader, and the first thing I'm going to ask them is this: are you empathetic? And they're probably going to say, "Oh yeah, I'm definitely empathetic. It's not a problem. I show a lot of empathy." And the second thing I'm going to ask them is, when you made these cuts, when you told your staff below you to make these cuts, were you empathetic to the people that were going to be cut? And let me ask you this third question, which is the most important. If the board decided to remove you, do you think that they're showing you empathy when they do that? The reason I ask them those questions is because I want to see where they are with their thinking, because that's going to tell me a lot on if they really understand emotional intelligence if I haven't given them an assessment. It's going to tell me a whole lot about what they're thinking and how they react, because empathy is a very important part of when you're making those decisions. The other thing, it teaches me and shows me how self-aware they are, right? Are they so self-aware about them and only them that they don't have enough self-awareness to recognize what's going on around them? That tells me a lot when I ask those questions. So when I do work with leaders and I do work with companies and corporations, the one thing that I come in with is I let them know that the assessment is going to give me a key indication of what's going on in the company. But a lot of companies don't want to invest all of that into assessments. So I have worked very diligently to be able to ask a lot of questions to give me information so that I can write things up and work with that leader and work with that company and let them know, here are your pain points. Here is what we can do to change those things. Here is how we can increase revenue. Emotional intelligence has been proven that when you bring a coach in, a trainer in to work with them from an EQ perspective, it has been proven and it's factual that it increases revenue.
Business and Financial Raw Talk, a no-holds-barred forum for leaders and innovators with award-winning business strategist and financial analyst LaWanna Bradford with the Bradford Group. With Raw Talk, we are empowering women to rise and succeed in business and finances and improve the world for the next generation. Get ready to get raw and real. Live each Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern on e360tv.com.
We're here with Marcus A. Wright with the Right Mentality, and we're discussing the EQ advantage, reinventing yourself from the inside out. He is a leadership strategist, transformational expert in the lanes of emotional intelligence. And you just said that when companies invest in that, and we affect change, first creating that awareness, being self-aware, then situationally aware, and implementing the tools and tactics to create that inside change. And I'm gonna bridge two things. So you just mentioned the revenue piece, and you used 3 C's. You said the $8 trillion deficit impacts our customers, our ability to think critically, so critical thinking, and conflict management. So let's look at those 3 and give me the bridge to if I'm creating an emotional intelligent workforce that's accountable and transparent, and I address these 3 things, how does that bridge me to increase profitability?
Oh my goodness, that increases everything, because now you have a staff that is definitely able to manage conflict. That's the first thing. They're going to be able to work with clients, work with customers, work with leaders. And if there's something that they disagree with, instead of getting emotional about it and angry about it, they're able to have a critical conversation. And when you can do that, you can solve a lot of problems. When you do that in solving problems, it allows us to see how we can get creative and come up with new things in the company, new incentives that will get our employees very happy. Customers, oh my goodness. Customers want people that can communicate effectively. Customers want people that have active listening skills. They're not trying to overtalk them. They're listening. And they're not just agreeing with everything that the customer's saying. They're listening and showing empathy to be able to answer the question intelligently, which then gets the customer to talk about, that's a great company to deal with. Right Mentality is incredible. Their staff works with you very well. They listen. I had an issue where I wasn't satisfied with something, and the customer service person at Right Mentality listened, understood what I was going through, and instead of me canceling my subscription, I ended up adding another year to my subscription. See, when customers and clients and people feel heard and feel like you care, they continue to work with you, but they also continue to purchase more from you, which increases revenue. But when you don't have a staff and a team that has that ability, customers run away, and then you get word of mouth, and no one wants to work with Right Mentality anymore because they found out their staff isn't worthwhile dealing with. I mean, think about that. You get on the phone and you talk to somebody and they don't really care about how you feel. Well, guess what? I don't want to work with you anymore. And I'm going to tell everybody else that I worked with, I'm never going to deal with them again because this is what happened. Now you're not increasing revenue. You're decreasing revenue, which continues to add to that $8.8 trillion deficit of people that are not emotionally intelligent.
Yeah, I love that. So we've talked about the customer side and increasing revenue. And so now let's talk about the risk of not being an emotionally intelligent leader. And this is with your people, right? Your most valuable resource. So what can leaders do today to help their staff, their team, feel seen, heard, respected, and motivated to give their best every single day?
Well, that's a great question, because what happens, LaWanna, is this. When you have leaders that are great at active listening, that are great at listening to their team and allowing their team to express themselves, and to have roundtables where we can talk and be open with each other, we can solve problems. We can fix things. But when you don't do that, and teams are not communicating with each other, and they're not getting along with each other, and they may need to help one other employee, but they don't want to. They decide to walk away from it or help them just a little bit, and they think they're doing a great job, and it's not working. You end up having that probably great employee at that point quietly quitting. I'm ready to walk out the door. But when you have a leader that is emotionally intelligent, that great person that you're working with is now ready to you put his hand out or her hand out and pull up that next team member so that the team deals with each other cohesively, and they're gelled and they're working so great. They're together. So it's so important that leaders are emotionally intelligent to be able to communicate effectively with their team members. That solves a lot of problems.
Well, let's talk about that, because sometimes there are changes that a company or a small business faces, and you have to have those critical conversations.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a difference between that emotionally intuitive leader versus the authoritarian. I just want to get things done. It's my way or the highway. How can individuals use and lean on their emotional intelligence to create buy-in where it's genuine? Because I think we've all been in meetings or situations where the leader says, I want your input, but they're just doing, just ticking it off because that's the thing to do. But they've already made up their decision. They've made up their mind. They're moving forward with their decision, and what you say has no point. So how do we reverse that, where leaders really do lean in to what staff is saying and then help guide it up the chain to improve sustainability with the company?
Well, when leaders want to actually act like they're listening and they're going to try to do their own thing anyway, their mind's made up, most times it fails. And you lose some critical people. You lose some great people. But to reverse that, there must be trust that's established between the team and the leader. When there's trust there, the team knows the leader's going to take it up. Now, the question is, how do you know that there is trust? Well, if you're in a meeting when you're with your team and you're asking for feedback and input that's going to make the company better, The one thing the leader should or could do is document that conversation and show them that they're taking it to the leader above them. How do they show them that? Well, they can't tell you everything at the leadership level, but they can tell you bits and pieces. They can communicate back to the team how well the meeting went. Or I was able to position myself with said leader, and he's looking into the things that we have suggested, because you guys are the front line dealing with everything and you know what's happening. So I took that information, I presented it to the leader that's above me. I showed him where we need to make improvements. I told him that this information came from a team meeting. Now the leader can communicate back to the team. And what would be great is if that leader that's above the leader would come to the team and say, hey, great feedback that you gave your leader. We are looking at those things. That will go so far. The trust that will be established at that point takes that corporation to a whole nother level. And what it does is it shows that they have emotional leadership, but they have adaptability leadership.
I love that. Marcus, we're going to take a little break. I want people to learn a little bit more about the Wright mentality. And then we're going to go back into our conversation with organizational culture and how emotional intelligence can shape it. And I want to talk about the generational divide and how it can help bridge it. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marcus A. Wright, CEO of Wright Mentality. And I have a question for you. Were you aware that 36% of people worldwide are emotionally intelligent? Did you know that 90% of all top performers in any corporation in the world are emotionally intelligent? Were you also aware that the number one skill that all companies look for are emotionally intelligent people? So what we do here at Wright Mentality is we coach, train, and help you to understand your emotional intelligence. We help you to become better and more equipped with your emotional intelligence so that you are aware of your triggers, that you become more self-aware, and that you can take this knowledge and grow your relationships with friends, your relationships with your spouse or significant others, and definitely, and most importantly, improve your career. That's right, take you to the next level in your career. It is a fact that emotional intelligence can help you increase your salary. So what we do at Wright Mentality is work with you on the improvement, understanding, and betterment of your emotional intelligence. We look forward to working with you, and you can definitely reach out and reach us at www.therightmentality.com.
Those numbers are a little scary. That only 36% of individuals, and you said worldwide, we're over 8 billion. Only 36% are emotional intelligent.
Correct.
And then we wonder why we have all these conflicts.
That is so true.
Wow. So we've talked about leaders and what they can do. But if I'm at the staff level and I'm hearing this and I'm listening to what you're saying, what can I do? What are the first steps I can take if my company is not bringing in this type of training or their online resources? I mean, how do I know that I am being pointed in the right direction, number one, and how will I know that I've arrived? And do you ever actually really arrive, or is it something that you keep expanding upon?
You don't really ever 100% arrive. It's an expansion. We're learning every day. That is the truest statement that's out there. We learn every day. Now, what a person can do is, the first thing is to look at themselves. Look at you and see if you're self-aware. Look at you and see how you react to things. Do you get angry quick? Are you able to show empathy better? Are you able to self-regulate? Those things you can regulate, notice within yourself right off the bat, right? But you can also observe your team. Observing your coworkers tells you a lot. Do you have the hothead over here? Or the person that's always frustrated over here? Or the person that's here that never listens? You start to notice the people that you work with because because you learn from those people, right? You see them each and every day. So I believe that leadership is not just at the top. I believe leadership is within you as well. So you can lead everywhere from where you're at. It's like a 360-degree leadership. You lead up to the sides and you lead below you. And if you're a person that's emotionally intelligent and you're seeing those things, it's best to lead by example. But it's also a great idea to make a suggestion to leadership that, hey, I was just reading this book, or I learned this on the watching a show that I think we can maybe need some training in emotional intelligence. And I don't really know what that is. Can you tell me, can we have that training? Don't be afraid to ask your leaders, can we do this? Is this a training that's available to us? And that shows that you're a forward thinker. Now, some leaders could be a little nervous because you're thinking that way, like, wait, hold on, what is Marcus up to? But if they're great leaders, they're going to tell you, you know what, we definitely need to look at those things. And that helps the team grow, and that helps the people around you grow.
I like that. We're going to go back in history a little bit, looking at some of the greats that actually laid the pave work or the groundwork for the work that you're doing. And often it's contributed to Maslow, but Abraham Maslow, and that's the looking glass self. But it's not. It's actually Charles Horton Cooley, and it goes in line with what you were just saying as far as being aware of our team. And I want to say these three fundamental points of his theory about the looking glass self. And I'd like you now to help us unpackage it, because it says, we imagine how others see us. We imagine how they judge us. We develop feelings about ourselves based on those perceptions. In other words, I become who I think you think I am, rather than being the authentic me. So how does emotional intelligence play in that? Because as you said, you're looking and our world is giving us feedback. It is that mirror, but sometimes those perceptions are false.
Well, I think the biggest issue that most of us have is looking at ourselves, and when I think of my emotions and how I am, if I end up in a situation where I'm frustrated, I learned this from my grandmother when I was a kid, while she was still alive. And one of the things she would always say is, when you're angry and frustrated, go look in the mirror. I want you to go look at yourself in that moment. Now, when you're a little kid, you're not going to do that. But as I grew up, it stuck with me. So I would always go look in the mirror and see how I am when I was angry. And then I would ask myself, what am I angry about? What is it going to solve? And how does the other person feel? So early on, I learned a little bit about emotional intelligence, and I didn't even know that that was there. But that's what my grandmother taught me as a child. And it stuck with me all through my life. And I do those things today. So when people are looking at themselves, because we're always concerned about what people think about us, think around us, and how people feel about us, and what they think about how we react. When you look at yourself, there's no harsher judge in the world than you about you. So are those people correct? Probably not. But are you insecure? Maybe that's what the issue is. Do you care so much about what they think? Probably. So what I like to work with people when that happens is I tell them, get a book, get a notebook right here. And I tell you to journal. Write down what you felt, what you saw, what you see each day, how you felt each day. How did you feel when that person said X? How did you feel when they said Y? This will help you to self-reflect. And when you're self-reflecting, you can't help but get better when you start to look at you and then think about what you can change. So don't look in the glass and look through the glass. Look at the mirror and look at what's looking back at you. That's what's going to help you.
You know, as you were talking, you know the song that was in my mind, right? Michael Jackson, Make That Change. Man in the mirror. Your grandmother was ahead of her time. Maybe he heard your grandmother and came up with the song.
Maybe. I just remember she used to always tell us that. I mean, she told my brother that when he was alive, and she told me that, and it's helped me a lot.
Yeah.
Because I'll be very open to the audience. I did suffer from anger management for years. And one day when I was a teenager, my grandmother said, Marcus, go look in the mirror right now. Right now, look in the mirror. She was so strong when she said that. And she was 4'11". So you weren't going to backtalk her because she was the matriarch of the whole family. Everybody was afraid of her. Even my dad, and he was 6'2". My grandfather, he was 5'11". So I ran to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. And she came back there and she said, what do you see? And at that moment, I started to learn, why am I angry? What did it solve? And how did it affect the other person? And when I was done looking, I calmed down and she sat me down on the sofa and she literally said, now, did you like that person that you saw? Was he a great guy? Was he a loving person? Or was he a real jackass? Now, this is my grandmother talking to me. So I just said I didn't like him at all. And she said, good. And she gave me a notebook and she said, now I want you to write down how you felt and how you feel right now. And I don't want to read it. I want you to read it. So I work with my clients, and that's one of the things that I tell them.
Wow. Isn't it amazing how we have grandmas and others in our family that have such a sight, an insight into who we are, that they can speak life into us.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, for our audience, so we have entrepreneurs, we have leaders from all facets that are tuning in. And based on what you're hearing in your circle, what do you think, if you could pick one thing that individuals really need to focus on in the next decade? And saying decade, that's probably too long because things are changing so rapidly.
Yeah.
But what thing should they focus on to make sure that they're keeping their finger on the pulse of themselves, so that they can navigate all of these uncertain shifts?
Adaptability. Adaptability is like one of the most important things that they need to focus on right now. The reason adaptability encompasses everything. It encompasses personality, emotion, reaction, learning, all of those things. If you can't adapt to change that's coming, if you can't adapt with what's happening with you on the inside, if you can't adapt to the new thing that they're going to be adding in the workforce, you're going to be behind the 8-ball. And what's going to happen at that point? You're going to become frustrated. You're going to become angry. You may even become a little lost because you're going to be trying to figure out, how are you going to take care of your bills? How are you going to eat every day? How are you going to do the things that you need to do? So if you can't adapt, you're going to have a hard time being emotionally intelligent, because self-awareness is great and we need to know those things, but adaptability and emotional intelligence are hand in hand. Without both of them, you're going to struggle, because when you're frustrated and you're angry, or even if you're happy and you're glad, if something happens and you can't adapt to the change, your emotions are going to shift very rapidly. So adaptability is what I would say, LaWanna.
I love that. And I hear you, and I just want to be a devil's advocate. So I'm going to be a person that just heard that. And I'm saying, okay, you're telling me to adapt. I understand that. Tune into me. But things are happening so fast, Marcus. It's like I can't even breathe. I turn around and it's change after change. And the change is happening so fast, it's creating division in the workplace. Mm-hmm. It's creating dissension in the workplace, and it's creating distrust in the workplace. How do I adapt to that? How do I become flexible and agile so that the change doesn't consume me? It may be overwhelming, but I don't become overwhelmed in it.
That is a great question, but I'm going to tell you, a lot of people forget that you can only take things one day at a time. It's overwhelming because you're looking at everything that's happening all at once. We have to adapt at that moment to make everything small. Have you ever heard the term, people, where you do things in bite size so that you can be successful? Life is a game of inches. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. And yes, changes will come rapidly, but you have to know yourself enough to understand that you can adapt to that change one day at a time. Some people say one day at a time might be too much. Great. I get it. Take everything at that point, 15 minutes at a time. I'm a football fanatic, American football. I love football. Take every minute, every change like one quarter, 15 minutes at a time. And that will get you through the day. No matter how rapid those changes are coming, it will help you to adapt. And once you do that, now you can look at it and say, maybe I can take 20 minutes. Maybe I can take 25 minutes. But strategically, slow yourself down and take everything 15 minutes at a time, one quarter at a time.
I love that. You talked about taking things in those small bites, and you said life is a game of inches. And I do want to put this down here because there are people we know that are struggling with all these changes, and just know that this show is for entertainment purposes only. It's not meant to treat or diagnose any diseases. If you find yourself in a state of mental or health crises, please check with your medical professional. Mm-hmm. Call 800-662-4357 or text 988 in the US. And you can chat at 988lifeline.org. You're not alone, and we don't want you to be out there struggling on your own. There are resources out there to help you. So please, if you're in that state of being overwhelmed, crisis, use the resources that we have here.
Once upon a time, I was out of breathing room. I didn't know what it was called, but I love having a label for it. So if we can define it, we can address it. And so breathing room is that space between your current pace and your limits and your abilities. So in breathing room, it's really important that we have that space between what we are capable of doing and what our limits are. And it's a very important concept, and is catching on fire with our mommies and our women in our little corner of the world. And I'm so pleased that we will learn more. We will be happier people. and not so stressed out. And we will operate in the love zone and not the fear zone.
When you're feeling like you're in a crisis, and I've been there, and I've been there. Losing my grandmother was hard for me. 7 years later, after that, losing my dad. Then 7 years after that, losing my brother. A year and a half after that, losing my grandmother. So I lost my paternal grandmother in 2000, my maternal grandmother in 2017, and you can do the math in between. What I would tell you is journal. Write down how you're feeling. So when those resources that LaWanna gave you, you can talk to them about how you're feeling, because now you've written it out of your brain and you can have a very open conversation with those resources that are trying to help you. As an EQ coach, I'm all about journaling and writing what you feel and getting it out of your mind. But I will also say I'm not a therapist and I'm not a medical professional, but I will strongly recommend that you take your assessment and the things that we talked about and the things that you wrote down, take those to a professional to help you to get even more in tune with yourself, because that's very important. Please make sure, if you're feeling some type of way, reach out to those resources, but also write them down to be able to talk to them. It will help you writing it out.
Thank you so much, Marcus. I can't believe we're almost out of time. I want to give you about 2-3 minutes to speak directly to the audience with any tips, tools, solution strategies that they can take going forward, speaking both to the leader and those that are at the staff level.
Leaders, I'm going to definitely tell you that it's extremely important for you to be an EQ leader, an emotionally intelligent leader, along with understanding how you need to adapt to the rapid changes that are occurring every day. So I would say that I need you to write down things that are occurring. I need you to journal, and I need you to be honest with yourself, because guess what? Just because you're running that multi-million-dollar company or multi-billion-dollar company, it doesn't mean that you don't have issues in your personal life. It doesn't mean that you're not struggling with some things emotionally outside of work. So those emotions can affect your leadership style. Make sure you write those things out and get with the coach like myself at Wright Mentality, and I can help you and work through those things. For other people that are not in a leadership role, that are just in the workforce, instead of quietly quitting, I'm going to strongly suggest that you write out what's going on in the company and try to talk to the leader professionally. And if you need a third party, do that so that you can communicate that. However, it's always great to have an emotional intelligence coach come to your organization and help you to work through those issues that you're facing within the corporation. Because I don't just do EQ, I do adaptability intelligence, I do DISC, Myers-Briggs, and it's all about personality. So you take those three, that's the trifecta of getting things done. Without that, there is no success. So I'm going to tell you to reach out to Wright Mentality, www.wrightmentality.com. You can find me on all social media at Wright Mentality.
Wow, thank you so much, Marcus. This has been great. I appreciate all the insights. I always learn from you, and I definitely want to get your book so I can learn a little bit more. And can you tell our audience again the names of your books?
The new book, which I think is the better book of the two, is basically using emotional intelligence to learn to adapt and transform your leadership style and your career for yourself in the future. That can be found on Amazon.com in their bookstore. And you can just type Wright Mentality and it will come up. And then you can find out Understanding Your Personality. That's an ebook that I did about 7 years ago. And the new book is already being worked on. And that book should be done in about 4 months. It's really about how I can move forward in life with everything that's occurring. So it's going to be along that line. We're going to be talking about AI, relationships, and relationships within ourselves. And you can always reach me at www.therightmentality.com.
Thank you so very much. Again, Marcus, I truly appreciate you. We'll definitely have to have you back to give us some more insights on just what's going on in this, but on the entrepreneur front, right? How we can show up better in our emotional intelligence superpower.
Thank you.
To our listening audience, we want to say thank you for joining us again on E360 TV for another episode of Business and Financial Raw Talk. And just remember that in life and in business, when your vision intersects with opportunity, success is inevitable. Be safe, be well. Bye for now.